So let's start, like you said. I like to look at sexuality and sexuality wellness in quadrants. So there's the physical component, there's a mental component, there's an emotional component, there's a spiritual component. And this is actually a model set forth by a sexuality researcher called Gina Ogden. She passed away recently. So if you look at it from there, from a physical standpoint, sure. I mean, sex is it's a stress reducer. It is connected to better sleep. It is been connected to lower, cardiac issues, just from a physical standpoint. I mean, it's fun and
Mhm.
it makes you feel good, right?
Mhm.
Fundamentally.
Mhm.
Emotionally, it brings connection in a relationship. It brings, at a very biological level, it's got oxytocin, the release of this bonding. Even, I think, masturbation, there are many, many, many benefits to masturbating, and one of the most important ones, I think, aside from just the release of stress and sleep and all of that, is just getting to know yourself, being able to
Mm.
pleasure yourself, knowing how that feels. I'll tell you a really interesting side anecdote. And I mentioned I work with men a lot. And this gentleman who had been married, been divorced, just getting to know himself, he was like,
Mhm.
when a woman picks up a sex toy, we're like rah rah, all empowerment and stuff like that. But if a man picks up a sex toy for himself, then it's creepy. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Talk to me more about that. So he said, look, part of my self love journey in this new phase of my life was I have
Mhm.
date nights with myself. I take an edible, I put on some music, I play with my
Right.
toy, and I really learn to re-love myself. And I thought that
Mhm.
was so beautiful. And
Mhm.
especially in the case of men, where there's so much around performance metrics: how big, how long, how fast, how many, all of this
Sure.
kind of stuff. There's this like frenetic
Right.
energy around
Right.
sexuality. I thought that was such a beautiful message, for a man to give other men. Kind of slow it down so you don't break it off. But that
Mhm.
whole idea about self pleasure just being
Yeah.
a pathway to getting to know yourself. I mean, from a mental standpoint, we talked about the stress aspects. We're also talking about when you're laden with that sexual shame, it's actually been linked to body image issues. It's
Mhm.
been linked to anxiety and depression. You just kind of, overall, you feel kind of worse about
Mhm.
yourself if you're
Right.
not able to connect, if you're not able to really stand in your skin. And it
Mhm.
affects your one-on-one relationship with yourself. It affects your relationship with people. I would even venture to say that it affects your professional life, how you carry yourself and how you feel about yourself.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there are lots of different studies that show that there are multiple benefits. I mean, there was one study I saw that, having good sex and a healthy sex life is better than prayer. And I was like, wow, better than prayer. That's, there's a spiritual message for
I
you.
wanna know how they measured that one. Just the researcher to me is like, "Huh, I wonder what they did to
So
measure
that's
that."
so that's also that's the problem in the
Right.
field, right? The sample
Yeah.
sizes tend
Of
to be
course.
quite small. You have to isolate certain factors, all of those things. But the messaging
Right.
is quite, it's quite
Yeah.
consistent. It's good for you. And one of the
Right.
studies that I read was really interesting, and this is in the context of aging in sex. So 50s,
Mhm.
60s, 70s and above, whatever you call elderly these
Mhm.
days, seniors, etc. um,
Mhm.
and it was those who have more fulfilling sex lives are those who believe they deserve it.
Mm.
So if you believe that you are worthy in your life after a certain age of having that energy and that vitality and that pleasure, you are more
Mhm.
likely to get it. That makes
Mhm.
sense, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that that's true at any age.
I
I
agree.
mean,
I
right?
agree.
Let's back up to, teenagers, young adults who are, college age, or, when you're in that middle part of your life when maybe you're procreating
Yeah.
and, working in your career and all that. I mean, I think it's true of any age, right? Because so many
Yeah,
people don't feel that they deserve it, or feel that it's not necessary for their well-being. Like it's a
absolutely. So
nice
I
to
would
have.
agree with you. I would agree with you. And I think that's why one of my most popular topics is sexless marriages. And it's
Mm.
heartbreaking. It is absolutely
Mhm.
heartbreaking. And that's exactly what I think is happening. I think people are not acknowledging the role and the importance of sexual well-being in their lives. I think they are prioritizing productivity and money. And
Mhm.
look, I'm not saying that having a roof over your head and all of those things are important, but I think making time for intimacy and pleasure and leisure, is that's what you're going to live for all that money that you're making, like it's not, at the end of the day, it's going to be a moot point if we're all sitting there literally isolated and inflamed.
Right. And, I mean, what you're saying goes to such a bigger issue, which is that we, as human beings, but especially in the West, we are always so focused on productivity, doing more, getting more, having more, right? That is like the way that's the message that's given to us here. It's not about pleasure, leisure, relationships, right? And so this is more of the same. So sexual health comes right underneath that because it is about your relationship with others and your relationship with yourself and pleasure and intimacy, all the things that, are deemed sort of secondary to productivity and doing more, getting more, being more, right?
You know what? It really irritates me. It's like
Mm,
it gets me under my skin. The idea that around the US, and India is becoming like this a little bit as well, the weekends have now been hijacked by sporting events. And I'm not
okay.
anti sports. My son's a competitive tennis player. I'm on board. But how can you, as a human being, expect to revitalize and regenerate yourself if you are literally going 7 days a week?
Right.
It just, when I see these parents, like they're in it, 9
Yeah,
a.m. to 6 p.m. sitting on the sports field in their
for
little
sure.
plastic chairs and stuff like that. I appreciate the dedication. I'm sure your kids appreciate that dedication, maybe, but I'm
Hmm.
sure your kids would love to see you go home and cuddle up with your partner. I'll tell you, my parents, and I'm probably revealing more about my parents than they want us anybody to know, but heck, here we are. um, Growing up in Bombay, on Sunday mornings, their bedroom door would be locked till 10 a.m. Locked. And my sister and I would sit outside and do our own thing. And then we'd hear that click at 10 a.m. and we'd bound in. And then the rest of the morning was fighting over music, the Beatles versus New Kids on the Block, or whatever was going on at that time.
Hmm.
Today, I know that if, as a parent, if I'm able to signal to my children, my relationship is very important to me and it will get the time it deserves, and you are very important to me and you will get the time it deserves, I mean, that's a win.
Hmm. That's amazing. I don't even know that I do that I've done that. I'm pretty liberal and progressive. I don't know that we've ever done that, had those
It's very
boundaries.
small signaling. Children are very
Yeah.
smart, where
Yeah.
what we say to them is much less
Hmm.
powerful than how we model our lives.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I also think it's the open discussions at home also. I mean, my kids, I have a 21-year-old and a 24-year-old. So, they
Yeah,
both have been educated really well. We've been very open about things. And so we talk about
yeah,
everything and talk about sexual
yeah,
health and talk about relationships, et cetera. I don't know that that happens in most households, especially in South Asian households. Even kids my peers who have grown, were born and raised here, I don't even know that they talk about it a lot. But that also could just be, me being a doctor, understanding that it's all connected, yada, yada, yada. But I don't think that most of us really prioritize it. It's either the thing that you did to sort of make a statement about being a rebel when you were younger and then you continued with that sort of mindset, or you just decided you're just going to shy away from it. And getting somewhere, like having a healthy medium, is always
yeah.
it has been hard.